Today we will be converting decimals to fractions. Converting decimals to fractions. And converting decimals to fractions is very easy. So let's do one example. Let's say we have a decimal 0.1. I'm sure some of you might already know this from our previous lesson. What is this as a fraction? In our previous lesson, we actually changed a fraction to a decimal. But let's see if we can do this. So when you're changing from a decimal to a fraction, this number right here is the numerator. So the 1 goes on the numerator. And the denominator is always a power of 10. Meaning it's always going to be a 1 followed with zeros. It could be 1 0, it could be 2 zeros, it could be 3 zeros. Okay, so how do we know how many zeros are going to be in the denominator? Well, you just look at how many numbers there are after the decimal point here. So there's the decimal point right here. And how many numbers are there after the decimal point? And in this case, we only have one number. We only have this number here. So that means we only have 1 0 in the denominator. And some of you might remember we've changed 1/10 to 0.1 in our previous video. We've changed 2/10 to 0.2. We've changed 3/10 to 0.3. Okay, and now you see why it also works the other way. When you're changing 0.2 to a fraction, this 2 is the numerator, and the denominator is a 1 followed by 1 0 because there's only one number after the 0 or after the decimal point here. For 0.3, the numerator is 3. This number right here is the numerator, and the denominator starts with 1 and it has a 1 0 again because there's only one number after the decimal point. Okay, so that's basically all the rule that you need to remember when you're changing a decimal to a fraction. Let's just try a few more examples here. So what would 0.7 be as a fraction? And what would 0.11 be as a fraction? And what would 0.20 be as a fraction? Well, let's start with 0.7. First of all, this number right here, let's use a different color. This number right here is the numerator. So the numerator is 7. And the denominator always starts with 1. And we need to know how many zeros there's going to be. And there's only one number after the decimal point. Okay, so there's only going to be 1 0. How about for 0.11? Well, this number right here is going to be the numerator. So the numerator is 11. And the denominator starts with 1. How many zeros are there going to be in the denominator? There are 2 numbers after the decimal point. So we put 2 zeros here. And then lastly, 0.20. This number again is the numerator, 20. And the denominator again starts with 1. And again, there are 2 numbers here, 2 and 0. So you can write 2 zeros down here. Okay, so that's all you need to do to change a decimal to a fraction. And one last thing that you need to remember is to reduce the fraction. Well, we can't reduce this one. We can't reduce this one, but we can reduce this one. So this one would reduce to, they both end in zeros. So we can divide by 10. We get 2 10s. And again, we can divide by 2 and get 1/5. Okay, let's try a few more decimal numbers here. So 0.301, 0.005, 0.17. Okay, what would these be as fractions? Okay, so 0.301, what would the numerator be? The numerator is this number right here, 301. And the denominator starts with 1. How many zeros should there be in the denominator? And there are 3 numbers here, 3, 0, and 1. So there should be 3 zeros in the denominator. Okay, how about this number here, 0.005? The numerator is going to be 005, but you don't need to write the zeros in the front, so you can just write 5. And what would the denominator be? The denominator, there are again 3 numbers here, so it's 1 followed by 3 zeros. And 0.17, that's going to be 17 on top, and 1 followed by how many zeros? There are 2 numbers here, so there should be 2 zeros. Okay, and so these are the answers, but we can reduce this one, right? So you can divide both sides by 5. It's going to be 1 over 200. Okay, so remember, changing decimals to fraction is very easy. Just write the number here after the decimal point as the numerator, and the number of the number of digits after the decimal point tells you how many zeros there should be in the denominator. Now, lastly, let me just show you one more thing. Okay. Let's try mixed decimals. So 2.37, 1.01, and 10.5. Okay, let's change these 3 mixed decimals to fractions. Okay, so there are a couple of ways that you can do this. First, you treat these separately. Let me use different colors for the whole number. So the red part is the whole number. The blue part is the decimal number. Okay, and the whole number, the 2, is just going to be 2. And then you can change the 0.37. Okay, so 0.37 is going to be 37 on the numerator. The denominator is going to be 1 followed by 2 zeros because there are 2 numbers. Okay, and this would be your answer, 2 and 37 over 100. So when you're changing a mixed decimal, it's going to be a mixed number. And there's another way that you can do this. I think this way might be more confusing, but who knows, you might find this more convenient. Just do the same thing that you did with decimals. So we have the number 101 here. So ignoring the decimal point for now, we can just write 101. And then the denominator is going to be 1 followed by 2 zeros because there are 2 numbers here after the decimal point. Remember, we're only counting the numbers that are after the decimal point. Okay, we're not counting this part. So there are 2 numbers after the decimal point. So we are putting 2 zeros here. And if you notice, we have an improper fraction here. So we have to change that to a mixed number. If you change this to a mixed number, it's going to be 1 and 1 over 100. Okay, so this is another way that you can use. Notice that if we used the rule that we've used here for this number, you'll get the same answer. If you treat the 1 and 0.01 separately, the 1 is going to be 1. The 0.01 is going to be 0.1 over 100. And the 0 just goes away when it's in the front. So we have 1 over 100, which is the same number that we got here. So you can use either of these 2 methods here. Okay, so let's try this one, 10.5. Let's use both methods. So the first method was separating into the whole number and the decimal, like this. So the whole number part is just 10. The decimal part is 0.5. So 5 is the numerator, and then we have a 1 followed by 1 0 because there's only one number after the decimal point. Okay, so that would be our answer, except you can reduce this. So we'll get 10 over, or 10 and 1/2. Or again, you can use the method that you've used here. We can just write this as an improper fraction, 105 over, there's only one number after the decimal point. So over 10. And if you change this to a mixed number, you're going to get the same answer, 10 and 5/10. If you don't believe me, you can try the division here. Okay, it's going to be 10 and with a remainder of 5. Okay, and then you reduce, you get the same answer. So that's how you change a mixed decimal to a mixed number and decimals to fractions.